Hey everybody, Steve here. So Arlene and Bella and I took a little trip out to Fort Sumter today. That's out on a little island in Charleston Harbor, and um, it was designed in the early 1800s to provide additional defense for the port of Charleston. So this is we launched from Patriots Point. We're on a little tour boat going out. Hey Bella. How are you? So, this is Patriots Point. This is the USS Yorktown. It was World War II aircraft carrier. And there was another destroyer out there, USS Laffey, there's actually a pretty interesting story on YouTube if you look it up. Some action they saw in World War II fighting the Japanese. This is heading around. It's big ship, Yorktown. Of course, it's not as big as the carriers today, but for its day, it was a big ship, and great tour if you ever come to Charleston. Of course, took a nice little harbor cruise out to Fort Sumter, but it's a beautiful day. A little windy, you can tell. There's a Carnival cruise ship. Now they're based. This ship's based out of Charleston for now, anyway. I think they just changed their lease now. They won't be here later on in the year. I think ships still stop here, but they won't be based out of here. But there's a marina that used to not be there when I was a kid. There's a lot's been added on to Charleston. This is cruising along in the harbor. This is a little island, Castle Pinckney. That's what that is right there. That was an early fort in Charleston back in the day. And it basically became obsolete in probably the mid-1700s. It's too far in to the port, so the coastal defenses for the defense of Charleston Harbor needed something a little closer to the ocean to keep people from getting in. So they built Fort Moultrie, that's on Sullivan's Island, and Fort Johnson. And then they finally built Fort Sumter. So this is a nice view from the ocean side of Charleston, seeing downtown Charleston. You can see the church steeples there, looking around, panning up and down that's a Rainbow Row and the Battery. It's a pretty famous area. Little marina there. It was a beautiful day. It's nice, some more nice pictures of downtown Charleston. It's right on the Battery there. Beautiful city. And there's a little closer shot. That's a nice one there with the church. I think that's St. Philip's, I believe, or St. Michael Church. This is looking back towards Mount Pleasant. There's the Cooper River Bridge there. This is looking over towards James Island. And there was a Fort Johnson. Sorry about the wind. Fort Johnson was where a lot of the shots that came. So Fort Sumter was one of the forts that were manned by U.S. troops, and then South Carolina decided to secede from the Union in 1861 as a result, or 1860, late 1860, after the election of Abraham Lincoln. That's kind of cool. It used to not be connected, but over the years of dredging, they would dump all the sand over, and they basically created a little path there, which trees have since grown on and everything else. So technically, I mean, really, you could walk over to Fort Sumter now, but it used to be back in the day that it was just ocean. But anyway, so South Carolina seceded, and basically the guys, the U.S. troops went back into the fort, and that was a bone of contention. And of course, the U.S.'s position at the time was, it's a United States fort. You can't tell us to get out, even though it is in South Carolina. So, and that was the powder keg that was almost the war. Leading up February, March of 1861. That's Fort Sumter there. Here we are pulling up to it. So the fort used to be much taller. It was about as tall as that flag pole that you just saw there. That used to be how tall the fort was. It was made of brick and concrete, and you can see it kind of sticks out into the harbor, and it was a very effective fort at the time, keeping ships out of the harbor. So here we are walking off the boat and walking over to the fort. A couple of park rangers there helping us out. And yeah, there's like I said, the little spit of land that kind of connects James Island to Fort Sumter now. Low tide especially, I mean, it's wall you could walk across. So here we go, Fort Sumter. So you can you can still see some of the pock marks in the brick. So the night of April 12th, I believe it was, or 13th, the Confederates opened fire on Fort Sumter. The state militia opened fire, and it was under bombardment for about a day. And there's one of the cannons that were in the fort. They fired back. They were running short of ammo. You could still see shells in the walls, which is pretty cool. So, of course, there was damage, but not significant damage. This is Star of the West was a supply ship that the Union had sent down to resupply Fort Sumter. And some Citadel cadets and some South Carolina militia fired on the ship and scared it off. So it was the Star of the West. This is what the fort looked like back in the day in March of 1861. There was two on the sides, on the left and right side. There's like a 3-story barracks in there as well. It was basically a 3-tiered fort. But scared the ships off, so they were not able to be resupplied. This is a view from what the Confederates would have seen firing mortars into over the fort. They bombarded it for about a day, and this was after the attack. You can still see the pockmarks on the right there. Bombarded the fort, and then basically that's the flag of the militia. It's kind of cool, but the commander of the fort, basically they were out of ammunition, out of powder. Nobody had been killed, ironically enough, and they were out of supplies and food and everything. They had to surrender. So a couple of the battle flags. This is a flag of the U.S., and then this was the first actual official Confederate flag. They call it the stainless banner. So this was the actual flag flown over the fort, which it's pretty cool that they have that. Kind of like the flag in D.C. that flew over where the Star Spangled Banner. Anyway, those are holes where they nailed the flag back up on a pole when it was shot down. Anyway, they surrendered the fort on the 14th of April, and then the Confederates took it over. Now, from that point on, pretty much 1862 or so, the Union bombarded that fort and just beat it to a pulp. So you saw what it looked like right after they took it over. When you get these rifled shells like this against brick, it pretty much made a pile of rubble of Fort Sumter. So it went from a 3-story fort to basically one, and the one story's preserved because it was just buried under tons of rubble. So here's another view, kind of looking back towards James Island, back towards the fort. It's a flagpole, very nice. They were protecting against amphibious assault with these little pop gun mountain howitzers here. I think I'd rather have one of those big old cannons. But this looking back towards Charleston. So actually shots were not fired from Charleston, from the battery. This is 3 miles away. The cannons they had at the time couldn't reach that far. So here we are. You can see some of the casements. So Major Anderson was the Fort Sumter commander that surrendered to the Confederates. He later returned to the fort and hung the flag back up. So nice views. Thanks for watching a little history lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. And you ought to visit Charleston. It's nice here. Take care.